What happens when a Hollywood star known for his calm charm steps into a studio charged with unspoken tension and ends up revealing a side of himself no one expected? Before we dive into this unfolding storm, hit that subscribe button to Stage View and like and comment right now, because what you're about to witness is a moment that had the audience frozen, the host stunned, and Whoopi Goldberg visibly taken aback. The lights were softer than usual that morning, almost as if the View's studio sensed something was coming. The cameras glided across the audience, rows of eager faces, murmuring, laughing lightly, holding their coffee cups like talismans in the chill of the New York air. The theme music faded. The applause swelled. Then the four hosts walked out with practiced brightness, their smiles polished for daytime television. Whoopi Goldberg took her seat at the center, her presence both grounding and electric. Sunny Hostin adjusted her cue cards with a stiff, anticipatory energy. Joy Behar offered her trademark grin, while Sara Haines kept her smile polite, though her eyes darted to the side stage more often than usual. Because they all knew who was coming. Matt Damon. His name alone carried an entire history of cinematic legends, calm interviews, polished diplomacy. But today something felt different. The air wasn't merely warm with excitement, it felt charged, like static before lightning. Whoopi inhaled, exhaled, and delivered the introduction with her slow, confident cadence. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Matt Damon." The audience erupted. The kind of applause that rolls through a room like a wave. Cheers layered with whistles, the thumping of hands against padded seats. Matt walked out with that familiar half-smile, but there was something else behind it today. Something tight in his jaw, a flicker in his eyes. He greeted the hosts with polite hugs, shaking Joy's hand, nodding at Sunny, settling into the guest seat like a man sitting on a secret. The stage lights smoothed across his face, revealing a tension he was trying, perhaps failing, to mask. The interview began innocently enough. Whoopi leaned forward. "Matt, you've been in the industry for decades. This new film of yours, people are calling it your most intense performance yet." Matt nodded. "Yeah, it took a lot out of me. But I'm proud of it." Joy chuckled. "You always say that, but this time you actually look like you mean it." Laughter rippled through the audience. But Sunny Hostin wasn't laughing. She turned her gaze sharply toward Matt, eyebrow arched, posture straight. Something about the way she lifted her cue card seemed to signal that the tone was about to shift. "Matt," she began, voice echoing with precise diction, "you've always been seen as a calm, diplomatic figure in Hollywood. But recently, there's been a lot of conversation, especially online, about your comments in past interviews and how they conflict with what people expect from you now." Matt's smile faltered. The audience murmured. Joy blinked, surprised. Sarah looked down at her cards, almost as if she hadn't expected Sunny to go there so soon. Whoopi raised her chin slightly, a subtle warning for Sunny to tread carefully, but not stopping her. Matt's fingers tightened around the armrest, and he leaned in just slightly. "What comments are you referring to?" he asked, voice steady but edged with tension. Sunny's eyes didn't leave him. Statements about Hollywood responsibility, statements about what actors should or shouldn't speak out on. People feel there's a contradiction between those comments and how vocal you've recently become. The audience grew quiet, dangerously quiet. You could hear someone in the third row swallow. Whoopi's gaze flickered between the two of them, reading the energy, trying to anticipate whether she'd need to diffuse it. But Matt didn't look diffused. He looked lit. He took a breath, the kind of breath people take before stepping into a fight they didn't ask for, but maybe needed. "Sunny," he said slowly, "I think you're taking pieces of what I said over the years and twisting them into something they're not." Sunny didn't blink. "I'm quoting your own words." The tension sharpened, like glass pressed together, one wrong move from shattering. Audience members leaned forward in their seats. A woman in the back whispered, "Oh my God," while another clutched her bag to her chest like she was bracing for turbulence. Matt's jaw tensed. "Context matters." Whoopi raised a hand gently. "All right, let's just." But Sunny cut in. "Context does matter. And the context now is that people see inconsistency." Matt's eyes flickered. A storm hid behind that look, brewing hotter by the second. "Saying people see inconsistencies doesn't make them real," he replied. The tone in his voice shifted, deeper, firmer, startling enough that the audience broke into scattered gasps. Sara Haines adjusted her chair, trying to interject with some levity. "Maybe we should talk a bit about the film again." But neither Matt nor Sunny was letting go of the moment. "Matt," Sunny said, voice unwavering, The public deserves clarity. Matt leaned forward, elbows braced on his knees. And the public deserves honesty, which includes the honesty that sometimes what gets circulated about me, or anyone, isn't the truth. Sometimes it's narrative. Sometimes it's noise. Whoopi shot him a look, half impressed, half warning. This wasn't the Matt Damon anyone expected. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't smoothing edges. He was meeting the confrontation head-on. He breathes out sharply. "You want to have this conversation, Sonny?" he asked. "We can, but let's not pretend it's about clarity. Let's admit it's about stirring something up." Sonny's lips parted, the faintest crack in her composure showing as the audience gasped again. Joy muttered under her breath, barely audible but caught by a mic. "Oh boy," Sara whispered. "Here we go," eyes wide. But no one was more surprised, more genuinely taken aback, than Whoopi Goldberg. She leaned back slowly, eyebrows raised, her expression caught between shock and fascination. She had interviewed presidents, revolutionaries, notorious figures, but this was different. Matt Damon, calm, unshakable Matt Damon, was cracking open right in front of her. And then it happened. A moment so heavy it seemed to freeze the studio. Matt exhaled, his voice low, but controlled. "You know what the real problem is?" he said, turning slightly toward Whoopi as if seeking the one person he trusted to hear him. "People think they know who I am, what I believe, what I stand for. But they don't, because they only see fragments, sound bites, headlines, reactions." He turned back to Sonny, eyes steady. "And I'm tired of being treated like a headline." The audience erupted. Not in applause, not in boos, but in a mixture of shocked laughter and gasps, the kind of visceral reaction that no producer could have scripted. Whoopi blinked, stunned. For a heartbeat, she had no words. The camera zoomed slightly, tightening on Matt's face, catching the flicker of emotion beneath the resolve. Not anger, not defensiveness, something deeper. And then Whoopi finally leaned forward. "Matt," she said softly, voice almost maternal. "Nobody here is trying to reduce you to a headline." Sonny's expression softened just a fraction, but only a fraction. Matt swallowed hard. "Then why does it feel like every time I try to speak, I'm defending myself instead of explaining myself?" The studio went silent again. Sara's eyes glistened, maybe empathy, maybe shock. Joy tried to smile, but it came out tight, unsure. Sonny held her cards motionless in her hands. And Whoopi watched him like someone who suddenly realized she wasn't talking to the movie star sitting in front of her anymore. She was talking to the man behind all the layers. Matt leaned back slowly, as if the adrenaline was finally catching up to him. "I came here to talk about the film," he murmured. "But maybe I needed to say that." Whoopi nodded, her expression now calm, serious, respectful. "I hear you," she said quietly. "I do." The audience exhaled as one, like an entire room releasing breath they didn't know they'd been holding. But beneath that exhale, the tension wasn't gone. It was only shifting, changing shape, growing into something even more explosive. The air in the studio felt different now, thicker, heavier, charged with the weight of what Matt had just revealed. The audience didn't fully know why their hearts were pounding, but they felt it. Something raw had slipped through the cracks of daytime television polish, and the entire room sensed they were on the edge of something they weren't supposed to see. Whoopi sat back, fingertips pressed together, eyes narrowed in a thoughtful calculation. She knew this moment, this energy, was both a gift and a danger. Daytime television thrived on honesty, but this was cutting deeper than anyone planned. And The View wasn't known for letting emotional explosions go unmanaged. Sunny Hostin's expression tightened just slightly, her professional armor reconstructing itself after the impact of Matt's last comment. But behind her eyes, something else flickered, something that looked like regret, tangled with curiosity. Joy Behar, usually the first to jump in with a joke, stayed quiet. She stared at Matt with a mix of surprise and empathy, as though sensing that laughter now would be like tapping a sleeping lion. Sara Haines lifted her glass of water, but didn't drink. Her hand trembled just a touch, barely noticeable to the cameras but obvious to those at the table. And Matt sat with his shoulders slightly hunched, like a man who had just let something out he'd been holding for years. His jaw remained tight, but his eyes carried a quiet storm, guilt, frustration, and an unexpected sense of relief all fighting for space. Whoopi finally broke the silence. "Matt," she said gently, "we want you to feel heard here. This table, it's not meant to feel like an interrogation." Matt nodded slowly, though the tension around his eyes didn't fully ease. "I know," he replied, voice low. Sometimes it's hard to feel like anyone wants the real me. Not the version that fits the narrative. Sonny inhaled, turning slightly toward him. Then help us understand the real you. Matt's eyes flickered up, surprised, wary, but open. Okay, he said. Ask me. Sonny's posture straightened. A challenge accepted. But before she could speak, Sara jumped in, voice soft, hesitant. Matt, are you saying you feel misunderstood? By the industry? By the public? He closed his eyes briefly, collecting himself. When he opened them again, his voice was steadier. I feel like people decide what kind of person I am before I've even spoken. Like the world builds this image. And I spend years trying to live up to it. Or explain why I don't. The audience murmured in recognition, some nodding, some shifting uncomfortably. Whoopi leaned forward. That's not just a celebrity problem. That's a human problem. Matt almost smiled at that, a quiet, broken smile. Sonny softened a little. Matt, can I ask something honestly? He braced himself. Yeah. Do you think maybe part of why people react strongly is because you don't speak often? That silence leaves room for speculation. Matt blinked slowly. The question hit deeper than she intended. I don't speak often, he said, because whenever I do, something like this happens. He motioned faintly to the air between them, this tension, this heat. Joy finally cleared her throat. Well, let's be fair. This is more interesting than talking about box office numbers. A ripple of laughter washed through the audience, cutting through the intensity just enough to let everyone breathe. Even Matt cracked a reluctant smile. But the reprieve didn't last long. Sonny lifted one of her cards again, her tone thoughtful rather than confrontational. Matt, you said people only see fragments of you. So let me ask directly, what's something people think they know about you, but are wrong about? The camera pushed in. You could almost hear the director whispering, hold that shot. Matt exhaled slowly, deeply. His eyes drifted from Sonny to Whoopi to the audience. That I'm calm, he said. A wave of surprise slid across the room. Even Whoopi blinked, once hard. Matt swallowed. That I don't get angry. That I don't feel things intensely. That I don't get affected by what people say about me. Because I do. More than people think. The confession hung there, heavy, vulnerable. People assume I'm this easygoing guy, he continued. But the truth is, I work hard to keep myself together. And lately, his voice cracked just barely. Lately it's been harder. Sara's eyes glistened. The audience let out a collective ah, but there was no mockery in it, just empathy. Sonny looked down at her cards, then set them aside. Matt, she said, thank you for saying that. He nodded once, grateful. But Joy wasn't done reading the room. She leaned forward, pointing lightly in Matt's direction. You know what your problem is? She said. You want to please everybody. Matt let out a soft laugh, tired, honest. Yeah, maybe. No, maybe, Joy insisted. You do. And look, nobody can keep that up forever. Not even Jason Bourne. The audience erupted in laughter. Even Matt laughed, covering his face briefly. This was the first time the tension truly broke. And Whoopi seized that moment with years of hosting instincts. All right, she said. Let's pull back for just a second. Matt, you said you wanted to talk about the film. And we do too. But I think what just happened here, that was real. That wasn't for cameras. That was human. Matt nodded, more grounded now. Whoopi continued. So let me ask you this. In the film, you play a character under pressure. Someone who's pushed emotionally. Did that connect to what you're feeling now? Matt hesitated, then nodded. More than I expected, he admitted. Filming it brought up things I hadn't dealt with. Things I thought I'd buried. Sonny's eyebrows rose slightly. What kinds of things? He leaned back, eyes drifting toward the studio lights. The pressure to be perfect. The pressure to say the right things. The pressure to always be the guy people want. His voice dipped. And the pressure to never break. The words stunned the room. One woman in the second row covered her mouth. Whoopi nodded slowly. That'll crack anybody. Even a movie star. Matt's voice softened to a whisper. I'm tired of cracking in private. Sonny inhaled deeply. Something shifted in her expression. Understanding, respect, maybe even guilt. Matt, she said gently. I didn't mean to push you into a corner. I know, he replied. And I didn't mean to explode like that. It wasn't an explosion, she corrected. It was truth. The audience hummed with emotion. Matt wiped a hand down his face. The facade of Hollywood is gone completely now. You know, he said, leaning forward again. I walked in today thinking I'd talk about acting, about craft, about story. I didn't expect to talk about myself. Sometimes, Whoopi said softly. That's the story. The words hit him harder than he expected. The room fell quiet again, but differently this time, warm, reflective, almost protective. Then Sunny spoke once more, her voice careful. Matt, can I ask one more question? Not for drama. For honesty. He nodded. Do you regret saying what you said earlier? Matt thought about it. Really thought about it. And then he shook his head. No, he said. I regret how it came out. But not what I said. Why not? Sara asked softly. Because I don't want to live behind a mask anymore, he said. I'm tired of being the calm guy. The polished guy. The guy who always says the perfect thing. I'm not that guy. He paused. And maybe I never was. The audience gasped, not from shock but from emotion. Matt looked around the studio with new eyes. It's weird, he said quietly. I feel lighter. Whoopi smiled finally. That's what happens when truth walks in. But the truth had only just begun making itself known. Because while Matt Damon felt lighter, the studio felt heavier. The viewers at home, millions of them, were already reacting. The producers backstage were fielding frantic calls. Social media notifications were lighting up like wildfire. And none of them knew what was coming next. Because the moment of vulnerability was not the climax. It was the beginning of the storm. A storm about to break wide open. The storm didn't break all at once. It started quietly, like the faint tremble of a drum before the full orchestra crashes in. Backstage, producers hovered near their headsets, voices urgent but hushed. Stagehands stopped mid-step, whispering to one another, eyes darting between the monitors and the studio floor. The control room flickered with messages popping across screens. Clip trending already. Twitter reacting. Keep cameras tight. But in the studio, none of that noise touched the table yet. Matt Damon sat there in the bright light of the stage, unaware that outside the walls of that room, the entire world was waking up to what he'd said, to how he'd said it. The View hosts could feel the shift too. The emotional honesty had softened them, but it also left them walking across a fragile emotional bridge, unsure which step might make it collapse. Whoopi Goldberg leaned back, studying Matt carefully. She'd interviewed countless icons, but this was different. Matt wasn't performing. He wasn't promoting. He wasn't building a narrative. He was unraveling one. Joy Behar, the queen of well-timed jokes, had gone unusually quiet. Her eyes kept flicking from Matt to Sunny, as if mentally preparing a safety net in case things snapped again. Sara Haines sat with her hands clasped, her usual bright energy subdued but present, like she wanted to reach across the table and reassure him, but didn't know if it would land. And Sunny Hostin, her cards remained untouched, pushed far to the side. She had no desire to read from them now. Something else had taken root, a deeper kind of conversation, unplanned and raw. But just as Matt seemed to settle, the studio's energy shifted again. Because the audience, those rows of bodies who had been clenching their hearts minutes ago, began whispering. Not in judgment, not in mockery, but in stunned disbelief. A woman near the front wiped a tear from her cheek. A man in the back leaned forward, whispering to his wife. I've never seen anything like this. And that murmur reached Matt. His head turned slightly, catching the wave of hushed voices, and his expression shifted. His guard came up just a little. That old actor's instinct, awareness of being watched, crept back in. Whoopi caught the moment instantly. She leaned in. Don't go back into your shell now. You're doing all right. Her voice was soft, almost motherly. Matt inhaled, nodding once. I know. I just didn't expect all of this. Joy chuckled softly. Welcome to the View. The audience laughed, grateful for the moment of levity. But then Sunny spoke again, carefully choosing her words. Matt, she said, you talked about pressure. About being misunderstood. About the mask you've had to wear. He nodded slowly. Can I ask, she continued, when was the last time you let yourself actually feel what you're feeling now? Not on camera. Not in a role. But like this, in front of people. Matt looked down at his hands. The pause was long, just long enough to make the room lean in. Years, he confessed. His voice cracked. Not loudly. Not dramatically. But enough. Audience members inhaled sharply. Years, he repeated. I've spent years shutting things out. Telling myself I'm fine. That I'm strong. That these things shouldn't bother me. But they do, Sara said quietly. Matt looked at her. Yeah, they do. More than people think. A silence settled over the room again. So strong, so heavy, that even the cameras seemed to whisper as they moved. Then Joy, sensing the intensity rising again, tried to redirect the conversation slightly. So, your movie, she said with a nervous laugh. Does your character have emotional breakdowns on talk shows, too? Matt laughed, a full, real laugh. The first one that didn't sound forced. No, he chuckled. But maybe he should. The audience laughed with him, the room warming again. But Sunny wasn't done, not yet. She sensed that Matt was willing to go deeper, and something in her wanted to understand him fully, not just interview him. Matt, she said gently, what's been the hardest part for you lately? Matt's smile faded slowly, like sunlight slipping behind a cloud. The hardest part, he said, is pretending I'm okay when I'm not. Pretending I'm invincible. Pretending I'm always in control. His fingers tapped lightly on the table, an unintentional reveal of nerves. Hollywood likes you better when you're composed, he continued. When you smile. When you give them the version of you they've already decided on. And what happens when you don't give them that version? Whoopi asked. He looked at her, tired but honest. They start poking at the cracks. The audience murmured, some nodding, some frowning in sympathy. But Sunny, eyes sharp again, leaned forward slightly. Matt, I want to ask something. And I promise it's not an attack. Matt braced himself slightly. Go ahead. When you say you're tired of the pressure, tired of the image, does that mean you're tired of the industry? The question froze the room. Whoopi's eyebrows shot up. Joy straightened. Sarah's mouth parted in surprise. Matt didn't answer immediately. His chest rose and fell with a slow, deliberate breath. I'm tired, he said finally. Really tired. But not of acting. Not of storytelling. What then? Sunny pressed softly. He swallowed hard. I'm tired of being told who I am. The audience gasped again, a ripple of emotion shivering through the rows. I'm tired, he continued, of being expected to be perfect, of being held to a standard no human being can meet, of feeling like every mistake I make becomes my entire personality. His voice deepened, firm, emotional, unguarded. And I'm tired of apologizing for being human. Whoopi stared at him, stunned. You're not the only one, she said quietly. Believe me. Matt nodded at her, gratitude flickering in his eyes. But Sunny wasn't finished. Matt, she said, earlier you said you feel misunderstood. And you said you're tired of being reduced to headlines. Yes, he said softly. Do you think, she continued, that maybe sometimes you shut people out before they even understand you? Matt blinked, taken off guard. The question hit him squarely in the chest. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Joy leaned back, eyes wide. Sarah nodded slowly, as if she too sensed the truth in Sunny's words. Matt finally exhaled. Yeah, he said. Maybe. And why do you think you do that? Sunny asked. His eyes softened, not with anger this time, but with realization. Because I'm afraid, he whispered. The room went silent. Even the audience stopped breathing. Sunny swallowed. Afraid of what? A tear, not dramatic, not staged, not cinematic, slipped quietly down the side of Matt's face. Afraid, he said, that if people really knew me, they wouldn't like what they found. A chorus of soft gasps swept through the audience. Sarah's eyes glimmered. Joy lowered her gaze. Sunny looked shaken, genuinely shaken. And Whoopi. Whoopi put a hand to her chest, stunned by the vulnerability. Matt wiped the tear away quickly. Sorry, he muttered. I didn't mean to. Don't apologize, Whoopi said immediately. Not here. Sunny leaned in, voice cracking just slightly. Matt, I didn't know. I didn't mean to push you. I didn't know you were carrying that. I didn't either, Matt said softly. Not until today. Joy exhaled, leaning forward. Well, damn. The audience burst into emotional laughter, some wiping tears, some nodding in empathy. But then, from backstage, a producer made a slashing gesture across his throat. The universal signal. Wrap it. Now. Before it goes too far. Whoopi saw it, but she didn't obey. Instead, she leaned forward, silencing the producer with one glance. We're not done, she said softly. The producer froze. Matt watched the hosts, his breathing still uneven, but calmer now. And then Whoopi asked the question none of them expected. Matt, what do you want people to know about you? Right here. Right now. If millions of people are watching, what's the one truth you want them to hear? Matt stared at her, then at the floor, then back at her. And slowly, very slowly, he answered. That I'm trying, he whispered. I'm really, truly trying. His voice shook. To be better. To be honest. To be real. To be myself. A collective exhale drifted through the studio. "And I hope," he added, "that's enough." The audience erupted, not in cheers, but in soft, emotional applause. Supportive, gentle, human. Even some of the hosts clapped. But as the applause faded, Sunny looked at Matt with a new expression, half sympathetic, half conflicted. Because she knew something he didn't. This conversation wasn't over. Not even close. And what she was about to bring up next. The applause softened, then faded into a hush that felt almost sacred. For a moment, the entire studio seemed suspended, emotion hanging in the air like dust caught in a sunbeam. Matt sat quietly, his chest still rising and falling with heavy breaths, his eyes glassy but determined. He had cracked open completely in front of millions, and the shock of that vulnerability still rippled through the room. But Sunny Hostin wasn't done. Not yet, because even though she now saw him differently, saw the man behind the armor, there was a question she'd been holding since the beginning of the interview. A question the producers suggested she hold back. A question she knew might break whatever fragile peace had formed. But a question she knew the world would ask anyway. She took a breath, steadying herself. "Matt," she said softly, "I have to ask something harder." Joy's head snapped toward her. Sarah's eyes widened. Whoopi's expression tightened, reading the shift instantly. Matt's gaze lifted, tired but open. "Okay," he said quietly. "Ask." Sunny hesitated. This moment, this choice was a razor's edge. But Sunny Hostin had never been someone who shied away from difficult truths. And she wasn't going to start now. "You said you're tired of being misunderstood," she began. "Tired of living behind a mask. Tired of being told who you are." Matt nodded slowly. "So I want to ask you this," she continued. "When people criticize you, or when the public calls you out, do you listen? Or do you shut it out because it hurts too much?" The audience gasped softly. A ripple of tension slithered through the room. Matt blinked, visibly taken aback. He breathed in deeply, then let the air out in a slow, controlled exhale. "That's a fair question," he whispered. Whoopi watched him closely, ready to step in if needed. Joy muttered under her breath, "Here we go again." Sara clasped her hands even tighter. Matt leaned forward, elbows on the table, fingers interlaced. His voice was quiet, but clear. "I listen," he said, "even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. Because I know that sometimes the pain comes from truth." Sunny's eyes softened, relief flickering briefly across her face. Matt continued, "I'm not perfect. I've made mistakes. Said things I wish I'd said differently. Avoided things I should have confronted head on. And I hear what people say. I hear it all." His voice grew heavier. "But listening doesn't mean I always agree with the way people judge me. Sometimes the criticism is fair. Sometimes it isn't. And sometimes," he paused, "sometimes it feels like the world wants me to fail." A murmur spread through the audience, sympathetic, uneasy, emotional. "Matt," Whoopi said gently, "I think a lot of people feel that way. Not just celebrities." He nodded slowly. "I know, but when you're in the public eye, every mistake is magnified. Every misstep becomes a headline. And every moment like this," he motioned to the table, "becomes a defining moment." Sunny watched him carefully. "Do you feel like today will define you?" Matt let out a small, broken laugh. "I think today will expose me," he said. "The real me." The audience exhaled softly. Sara leaned forward, voice trembling slightly. "I think that's brave." Matt looked at her gratefully. "I don't feel brave," he said. "I feel raw." Joy nodded. "Raw is honest. And honesty scares people," Sunny added quietly. Matt looked at her, really looked at her. The tension between them had shifted into understanding, but something in her eyes told him she still had more to say. And she did. "Matt," she said, "you said earlier you're tired of apologizing for being human." "I am," he replied. "But you also said you want to be better," she continued. "So let me ask, what does being better look like for you?" This time, Matt didn't hesitate. "It looks like owning my mistakes," he said. "Not hiding from them. Not being defensive. It looks like speaking honestly instead of politely. It looks like allowing myself to feel things instead of burying them. And it looks like not letting fear dictate how I show up in the world." The audience erupted in gentle applause, supportive, warm, deeply moved. But Sunny had one last question, one that would bring the entire conversation full circle. "And what do you want?" she asked softly. "From us? From the public? From these conversations?" Matt's gaze dropped to the table. Then he looked back up, eyes clear, steady. "I want grace," he said. The word hit the room like a silent thunderclap. I want the space to grow, he continued. The space to be imperfect. The space to learn. I want people to understand that I'm figuring things out just like anyone else. Whoopi nodded. That's not too much to ask. Matt's voice softened. I hope not. The room fell into a long, emotional silence. Then Whoopi spoke, slow, deliberate. You know, Matt, people forget that actors are human. That celebrities are human. That the person sitting here is just a man trying to do his best. Matt swallowed hard. Thank you, he whispered. Sara leaned closer. We see you. Joy added. And we're not judging you. Sunny inhaled deeply, her voice low. I hope you know that today. I wasn't attacking you. I was trying to understand you. Matt nodded. I know. And for what it's worth, she said softly, I'm glad you showed us who you really are. A wave of applause filled the studio. Bigger this time, fuller, rising like a crescendo of human empathy. Matt looked around, truly looked, and a faint smile curved across his lips. Thank you, he said to the audience. But then, a sudden burst of sound shattered the moment. A notification pinged from the backstage monitor. Another. A producer rushed to the side of the stage and whispered urgently to the floor manager. The manager's eyes widened. He whispered something to Whoopi. Whoopi inhaled sharply. Matt, she said cautiously. You should know, social media is already exploding. This interview, it's everywhere. Matt's eyes widened. Sunny's expression tensed. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. Joy muttered, oh boy. The audience collectively gasped. Matt leaned back in his chair, shocked, almost dazed. This fast, he whispered. Whoopi nodded. This isn't a normal interview. People can feel that. Matt rubbed a hand over his face, overwhelmed. I didn't do this for attention, he said quietly. I know, Whoopi replied. But the world heard something real today. And real goes viral. Matt's shoulders slumped. A swirl of emotions passed across his face. Fear, relief, vulnerability, hope. Matt, Sunny said gently, whatever happens next, you told your truth. That matters. He nodded slowly. Then he looked into the camera, eyes raw, unmasked, honest, and spoke directly to the viewers. For anyone watching, if you've ever felt misunderstood or judged or scared to be yourself, you're not alone. The audience erupted in emotional applause. And then the music swelled, the closing theme. The hosts rose to their feet. The audience stood, many wiping tears, others cheering. Matt stood as well, shaken but stronger, hugging each host in turn. Whoopi whispered something to him that the cameras didn't catch, but he nodded grateful. As Matt walked off stage, the audience watched him like he was walking through a doorway into a new version of himself. Because in a way, he was. Aftermath, the world responds. Within hours, the clips exploded across every platform. Millions watched. Millions commented. Some praised his vulnerability. Some questioned his honesty. Some empathized deeply. Others debated fiercely. News outlets ran headlines like, Matt Damon breaks down on The View in unexpected emotional moment. Whoopi Goldberg stunned as Matt Damon opens up. Sunny Hostin and Matt Damon have raw, unscripted exchange. Reaction videos flooded YouTube. Twitter trended for hours. TikTok remixed the moment he said, I'm tired of apologizing for being human. Some called it iconic. Some called it shocking. Some called it the most real interview Matt had ever given. But regardless of opinion, everyone was talking about it. And Matt Damon, for the first time in a long time, felt seen. Not perfectly. Not without criticism. Not without nuance. But seen. Viewer call to action. Break the fourth wall. And now it comes to you, the viewer. What would you have asked Matt? Do you think he was right to open up like that? Was Sunny fair? Was Whoopi right to keep the cameras rolling? Drop your thoughts in the comments right now. I want to hear your take on this shocking moment. And if you want more explosive, emotional, cinematic celebrity stories like this one, subscribe to Stage View right now. Hit that like button. Share your opinion. And stay tuned, because the next story might just shake the internet again.